This is No Better with your host, Kipper Jones.
Good evening. Welcome to No Better, and I am your host, Kipper Jones. I'm a singer, songwriter, entertainer with a conscience, and you are watching and living his dream. Thank you for tuning in. Tonight's show is all about the who's, what's, why's, where's, and when's of voting. And so since we're in Georgia, there are a couple of things that we should know. This is Super Tuesday. We hear a lot about it and don't maybe know a lot about it. So what is Super Tuesday? It goes like this. In order to win on the first ballot of the Democratic National Convention, a Democratic candidate would need 1,991 delegates. Each state is allotted a certain amount of delegates, and Georgia, if you're wondering, has 120. So on Super Tuesday, 14 states, including American Samoa, will hold their primary elections. 34%, or 1,357 delegates, will be up for grabs. Georgia is not part of that number. So our early voting, our Georgia primary election is March 24th. And early voting actually started today, and we're expecting a larger than usual turnout. The thing that most registered voters are most concerned about in this election, besides candidates, is the new voting machines. And here to talk about the new voting machines is political consultant and community educator for the Georgia Secretary of State's office, Leo Smith. Leo, do we have you there? No? If we don't have Leo, I tell you what, we have a video of the new voter machines being demonstrated, and I'd like to share that with you. If you're a Georgia voter, you may want to check this out.
A typical voter scenario, what the voter is going to see on election day, coming to the polls. First thing that we'll do is we'll come up to the poll worker and we'll present our ID, and we'll put our ID in the tray. The poll worker will scan my driver's license. That will give them obviously my address and allow me to get a card encoded with my precinct information. They spin the poll pad around to me. I will sign my name. They'll encode my voter card, get my voter card, and I will walk over to the machine. All right, so I put my voter card into the machine. I get my ballot. Then going through my ballot, I can make my choices. I can use the next and previous buttons to navigate through the ballot. When I'm done with the ballot, I am presented with a review screen. I can scroll down and verify who I voted for each contest. If I want to jump back into a contest because I didn't make enough selections, I can do that. In order to change a vote, I would need to deselect and then select the person I wanted. Once I'm satisfied with everything on the ballot, I select print ballot. I'm given another option to either print or go back and review my choices. I'm going to select print ballot. All right. So once my ballot's printed, I'm going to take my voter card, I'm going to take my ballot, and again, I'm given the option to verify who I voted for on the ballot, and then I'm going to walk over to the scanner. All right, so I'm going to come over to the ballot scanner, and I'm just going to insert my ballot. And then the machine's telling me that it's processing and casting my ballot. And then it says that the ballot's been successfully cast. And at this point, I hand my voter card back to the poll worker.
So I hope you guys got a look at that. It's a whole lot different than what we're used to. We haven't had a paper ballot situation here in Georgia, so now there's a paper ballot, sort of. It's not quite probably what we were looking for, but it's a step in the right direction. I would hope that everybody gets a chance to either try the new voting machines. The churches are being outfitted with them, so if you can check with the Secretary of State's office, you may be able to get a demonstration at your church. Also, check with the Secretary of State's website, which you'll see going across the bottom of the screen, and see that if you can find somewhere where they're demonstrating the new voting machines. They seem to have a bit of a privacy concern, as they're much more out in the open and they're not really in a booth. And so there have been a lot of questions as to how that's going to work. So we'll figure it out, I guess, as we go. But these are the new voter machines that we've been outfitted with, and that's where we are here in Georgia. So thank you very much. I'm so sorry we couldn't get Mr. Leo Smith up to answer a couple of the questions that we have about the machines. But if you have any questions, again, shoot them to me. That's fine, and I'll try to get to Mr. Smith's office and get some answers back to you. All right, how's that? Thank you all so very much. So I'm going to get to our next guest. I'm really excited about this person. She stands where I aim to stand one day, right at the intersection of social justice, political empowerment, human development, and cultural arts. She was presented the 2010 White House Champion of Change Award and is known by many as a Black Renaissance woman. I call her a force of nature. As the co-founder of the Black Voters Matter Fund and the BVM Capacity Building Institute, she is adamant about ensuring that all human beings have access to quality education, safety, security, peace, love, and happiness. She's been featured on CNN, HBO, MSNBC, and Fox, just to name a few. And I personally know she's a hell of a jazz singer to boot. And she's also a fellow at Harvard University. So let me add that right now. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope she's there. Miss Latasha Brown.
I'm here. How are you, Kipper? How are you?
I am stunned right now because I'm sitting here looking at your beautiful face. I'm wonderful.
You know, today was election day, so it's a rough day. I was like, I don't have my makeup on right now.
Oh, my goodness. You are beautiful, makeup or not, dear lady.
Well, I will receive that love today. I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. Thank you so very much. I happen to know that your schedule is tantamount to that of probably, maybe only God is probably busy as you are. So thank you very much for taking the time out. I heard you just got in from Alabama.
I'm literally 5 minutes in from Alabama. So I am literally just getting in from Alabama.
Wow.
Like maybe five minutes ago.
Wow. Well, again, thank you so much. I appreciate you. So quick questions, and I'm not going to keep you long because I know you probably want to, put your feet up. But one thing, we just showed a clip of the new voting machines that we got here in Georgia. I just kind of wanted to get your opinion on that, your take on the new voting machines, why they think we needed them. Do you think it's a beneficial move? I mean, how do you feel about that?
It's a couple of quick things I'll just say. One, we know that this is a state that has a horrendous history on voter suppression. That is without question that those machines were ordered at a period and a time and under an administration that has demonstrated and shown itself to not only not care about votes being counted, but has been active in marginalizing and suppressing the Black vote. And so I think once again, part of what happens as a strategy by those who don't think that they have the numbers or can control the vote is to create chaos and confusion. And so part of these machines, getting these machines without really even knowing that these machines have problems, knowing that this was a really major, who changes machines for a presidential election year? And so I think that is all part of a larger voter suppression strategy. In addition to that, I think that it is even the quality and the fact that there was a report that came out, that these machines can be breached. So there's not a safety of the vote or protection of the vote in this process. So I think the machines are very, very problematic. I am glad that you're talking about it, as well as others and organizations like mine that are really going to work to make sure that people at least have the information they need as they go to vote. But once again, I think this is why this is a fundamental issue of why we have to have a new administration in place, a presidential administration that will have a real Justice Department, and really will have an election commission. It's really important on the federal and the state and the local levels that we take voter suppression and these different tactics that the Republican Party, quite frankly, has been using to suppress and marginalize Black voters.
I hear you loud and clear. I had some questions that I was going to ask her. I had a representative from the Secretary of State's office who was going to join us here earlier. We couldn't get the connection to go through, but one of those questions was about the security of the machines.
Kipper, I'm here if you need to.
Okay. I gotta. So I was going to ask about the security of the machines, but I can't. I don't know if I can get that answer right now. So I just have to take what you said, Natasha, because I feel the same way. I mean, I just think that in the middle of a presidential election, and here we are having to deal with it, but that's what we have to deal with, and I just think we have to make the best of it. So, here we are, right?
And it's not just, we can't stop there. I mean, I think it's a couple of things, and I do think that I saw where your other guest is on as well. I think it is a couple of things. I think one, it is we've got to do what we've got to do in the moment, but two, I also think we've got to be proactive.
Yes.
And so being proactive is that we've got to hold those folks accountable and put people in positions that are going to look out for our interests. Yeah. That's why we need a governor. A governor's race is coming up in the next 2 years. We need to be very adamant about putting a governor in place that is going to be serious about protecting the right to vote for all of the citizens in Georgia. That's why it's very important and critical that we get out, even for this election cycle, that Georgia is a state that really could be in play. And the potential is here and the numbers are here. We've got to do the work. Yeah. And so part of what winds up happening, there are people who are kind of complaining or folks that just to go do their vote. No, we need all hands on deck. At this point, every person needs to be responsible for at least 10 other votes. It's really that critical of where we are. And then three, I think we do need to connect to and hear and learn from people, just like we did, just like your guest, to really learn about understanding the machines and learning at how it jeopardizes and undermines democracy, so that we can actually talk about this, so that we can really shift and educate the public around what's happening, so that we can appropriately respond.
Good deal. Okay, let me ask you this too, Tasha. Now I read through your website too, and you pointed out that 45% of the population doesn't vote. So knowing that some of us are engaged in getting them engaged, what are some of the key points that we can make in doing that work?
I think a couple of things. So quickly, one is part of the way that we do our work with Black Voters Matter is we recognize that part of some of the challenge has been, a lot of the voter participation is be centered around either the political parties or the candidates. And so what happens when you don't have a particularly exciting or charismatic candidate? Or what happens if you have a exciting political candidate? The bottom line is when that candidate leaves, a lot of their infrastructure leaves. Case in point, the Obama campaign. Right. And so for us, what we think is really important in the message is one is to help shift the narrative for people to really make campaigns and elections be centered not around the political parties or the candidates, but centered around us. And that's kind of what we did in Alabama. It is what we did in Alabama. That Doug Jones wasn't a candidate that we particularly knew, but what we were able to do is to really go and engage Black folks in a larger conversation to say, this is really about us demonstrating our agency. This is about self-governance, and this is about us fighting for harm reduction for our community, and literally being able to frame it where people can see themselves in the process, and see the need of why their vote matters. I think that's the number one piece. The second piece is you got to do the grind. You've got to keep doing the work. You got to keep doing the work. You got to keep doing the work. Oftentimes, people are very easy to dismiss our communities, or dismiss those communities, or dismiss people who are saying, I don't want to vote because my vote doesn't matter. They'll either become argumentative with them or they'll dismiss what they're saying, when the truth of the matter is we've all felt that way. Like we've all have voted for folks we did not like. We've all voted, did not want to have had one moment that we really was like, I don't really feel like voting, but I know I have to. And so part of what we got to do is really be honest and affirm that people are not crazy when they're saying that they've got these concerns. They're based in reality. It's real. The question is, how do you respond to it? And so what we do is when we're talking to folks, we don't tell them if you don't vote, you don't count. We think that that's, first of all, that's untrue because we don't think that your value is how you are in the system, that your value is rooted in your humanity. So then when we're talking to folks, we're talking to them really about three things. One, we're reminding people that you have power and that somebody is going to make a decision, a day-to-day decision about your life. And so you're right. They cheat in these elections. You're right. Oftentimes there are elected officials that are in office that have not delivered what they said they were going to deliver. But at the end of the day, if anybody is making a decision about me, I think that I need to have some say-so in it. And so that resonates a different kind of way with people. I think that that's one part of our message. The second part of our message is our consistency and our persistence. So we're not the organization that just comes around election time. It's kind of like having that friend that the only time that friend calls you is when they want something. Who wants to see that friend coming? Right. You know, so part of people don't want to feel like they're being used or extracted or they're just another number for someone else's win. That part of our work has been our consistency to literally stay in communities. We say our work is 365 days out of the year. So like today is an election, tomorrow we'll be back on the road in community. On Friday, we'll be back on the road on community. The bottom line is our work never finishes. That we're constantly building, like in the Bible it says from faith to faith.
Yes.
We're going from faith to faith. That's our work. And so that in itself creates a certain level of trust and credibility that the community feels like you are a credible messenger because they see you doing the work. And they see that you're not just caring about them about voting, but that you have a vested interest. So that's the second thing. And the third thing that I'll say is start from where people are and what they're excited about. We had a race in Florida a couple of years ago that we were thinking that we were organizing around the governor's race. And what came up in a conversation that we had with listening to people that they were interested in the school board race. And so we changed our whole strategy and said, well, our goal is to support what you all see as power. As a result, they were able to win and participate in the school board race. Guess what happened? It drove up the numbers of those that participated in the governor's race. So oftentimes it starts from the bottom and go up. That starts from the top and trickles down. And so I think those three things, like literally being honest and organizing folks around where they are, showing them that they are connected to these issues, to doing the work, actually listening to people, being consistent, literally being able to be consistent. I think the third thing, and then I also think, which is very, very important, that oftentimes we're trying to move people in elections around fear. And while fear is a good catalyst at first, it can't sustain itself. After a while, when you're just telling people fear after fear, it's too much for them. And so they just turn the process off. That part of our way is organizing around hope. Like we start in communities and say, what is your radical reimagining of America? Wow. What does that look like? What does the community that you want to live in, what does that look like? And start from that frame so that we're starting from a place of power instead of powerlessness. And so that has been our strategy. It's worked well for us so far. There are many other strategies, but that's the strategy that we've used and what has worked well for us.
Well, I agree. Hope wins.
Hope wins.
Yes, indeed. In the face of criminal justice reform, which you've also talked about, especially on your website, being an issue that concerns Black voters mostly, and to your point, I address voters when they give you the who should I vote for thing, and I just say don't vote for the person, vote for the issue. I mean, it's really not, I try to speak to that. So would you speak to how important it is to vet the judges, the sheriffs, who will dictate judicial and law enforcement areas in our communities?
Kipper, I think you are right on the money. That's exactly like helping people to understand the issues and moving them away from being so candidate centered. That part of what we recognize in our community, that there's this issue around, even from police sanctioned violence, police brutality in our community. The DA has a tremendous amount of power on who is charged, who's not charged, what charges go towards our community, how stiff the recommendations for the sentences. And so part of our work has to be around educating people around how literally the system works, around who is in position of power. We'll do our power analysis. Who is in position of power that can do something about this, right? And so part of what we have to do is really helping people to understand that part of what makes us most vulnerable and what we've got to look at is we've got to look at those judgeships and those DAs and those people in leadership within the criminal justice system that we know that we are disproportionately impacted. We know that there is a distinction between a disproportionate number of Black folks, the harshness of the sentences we get and the sentences that our white counterparts get. We know that there is an attempt, and has always been, to get these plea bargains out of folks that necessarily may not have to plead if they had adequate access to legal support and legal representation. And so in light of all of those things, I think one of the most critical pieces that we've got to pay attention to is really those positions within the criminal justice system, like the DA, who is the sheriff, who is the mayor that appoints the chief of police, and literally have a map power and really understand who is in those positions of power. And when they're not good actors in our community, just like we put them in, we need to take them out, make them targets and take them out. We saw that happen in St. Louis and in Ferguson, where there was a complete shift in many of the in some of the judicial spaces and in the DA space, which has made a tremendous difference in terms of charges they've seen, in terms of having restorative justice, all of those things. It makes a difference. And so what we've realized is not that our community doesn't care. Our community needs the support to really know and to do the work to help organize us to know what our moves should be in that. And whenever we've seen people really make that effort, we've seen differences in those spaces. And like I said, I raised up, St. Louis, but we've seen that in Birmingham and other places. We've seen it in Houston, where you got all of these Black women judges. We saw it in Birmingham. We had 16 women judges, Black women judges that were elected the same time Trump was elected. So part of it is not about our folks won't support or won't vote. Oftentimes it's around there's not information for people to really know how critical it is. And what we found is when the work is done, people step up and respond.
Well, that's one of my missions here, is to get the information out. And you are so helping me do that, Latasha. Thank you so very much. I got one more question.
Yes.
It's 2020. When is Latasha Brown running for office?
Latasha Brown has done that. I got the scars on my back to show.
I get this. I get the scars. I understand all of that, but we need you in somebody's Senate seat somewhere, making a difference on a national level. And you are making a huge difference out there doing the work. I get it, but we need you. And I'm just gonna leave that right there.
I hear you, Kipper Jones. I hear you.
Listen,
I'm just gonna say, when you know better, you do better, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So thank you so much. And I'm so, I just want to say thank you for this platform. And I'm very, very happy that you're doing this show, because people do need to know. I think part of the biggest gap that is happening in our community is not that people don't care. It's not that people are apathetic. I hate when I hear folks say that, that people are apathetic, that essentially there is folks are surviving. A lot of folks are like grinding on their day to day. They're not thinking about politics like some of us are thinking day to day. And some of this information is confusing and it can be overwhelming. And we have had bad leadership and all of those things that make people disengage. And so you doing this show and giving the opportunity for people to learn and to know, because I do believe that when you know better, you do better. So thank you for the work that you're doing.
Oh, Tasha, thank you so very much. And I hope to see you soon.
I hope to see you soon as well. Thank you.
All right. Be well. Bye-bye.
And bye-bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Latasha Brown. All righty. Well, we are going to move on here. I have a guest here who I met about a week or so ago at Congressman Hank Johnson had what he called his Restoration Resource Fair. And at this Restoration Resource Fair, I had a chance to meet a young lady who was with an organization called the Black Youth Vote. And I just thought that that was just absolutely fascinating. And so I would like to introduce to you all Miss Ariel Singleton. Ariel, are you there?
I am here.
There she is. Hey, thank you for waiting. I appreciate you. You've been in the queue for quite a while now, so thank you so much for hanging in there. I really appreciate it. So I was there at the Restoration Fair, and I saw you working with, is it United Georgia? Is that the?
No, my organization that I work with is Georgia Stand Up.
Georgia Stand Up, that's who it was.
Yeah, Georgia Stand Up.
Georgia Stand Up. And you gave me a flyer because you guys were having a watch party for the debate that was upcoming.
Yes.
And so I went online and I saw that the watch party was a smashing success and that you guys had a great time and all of that. And you mentioned that it showed you that the young people were interested in the issues that affect them and that they were expressing that they were very interested in that. So would you talk about some of those issues that that they may have voiced?
Sure. So one thing we've noticed and that I've noticed just, especially being a millennial myself and a new adult, is that we are not more so focused on who can do what and who we need to vote for. We're worried more so about issues and what will make our life better as we're growing up and navigating life. And a lot of the issues that we see that actually bother us, and surprisingly, it's not education, more so it's student loan debt, healthcare, minimum wage, things that revolve around your degree and getting the worth out of your degree as far as in how much you're being paid and that wage gap
Mm-hmm.
from what you're making versus what your qualifications are. So those are some of the issues that we're noticing or that I'm noticing.
And do you think that conversation, if we were to have that conversation, there's a lot of, let me just say that there's a lot of people in your demographic who are just straying away from engaging in the process.
Yeah.
And so would it be your contention that we should maybe address those subjects when we're trying to get them to engage or get them registered and get them active in voting? Because it's one thing to get them registered, but it's a whole other thing that when election time comes around to get them voting. So.
Yeah. So that's one thing that we've been looking at, and one thing that we've noticed a lot of times this year. I think the big thing and it's really a good thing is that there's an increase in first-time voters. Voters that weren't able to vote the 4 years ago in the other presidential election. They're just now either that age between 18 and 23. So we're able to capture them. But them along with millennials that are that age between 20 and 35 will make up a huge population of the electoral vote that will go out to actually do that voting. And so when addressing that, bringing that up to them and letting them know, like Ms. Latasha Brown was saying, their power as actually in being a young adult and getting out there and vote. As we know, that gap is closing on the voter turnout with millennials and young adults versus older adults and more seasoned and senior voters. And so if we improve that power and let them know that they have that power to make the difference, these issues that bother them and that affect them directly, especially most of them are coming out of college or in college and then now understanding what it really takes to be a student and what it takes to navigate. Student loan debt is going to be really big to them. So if we stress that power of how important it is to vote so that you can vote to get the things that you need out of this and not allowing your student loan debt to swallow you or even healthcare swallow you, and the policies that we have in the government that are put in place that kind of make it hard, that we look at and it's like knocking on our door and waiting for us to be able to pay for them, that we will never or seeming though we'll never be able to pay for, if we stress that power that we have to change that, I think that would help a lot of the millennial voices that are wanting to speak out.
Yeah, I think that there are those voices that are just being held back, and I'm just trying to figure out how you break that wall and get to,
Yeah.
get
And
to that piece.
I think that wall is up so much because a lot of times, especially being a young adult, you see a lot of information around the presidential elections, um, and it's more so stressing their power in, if you vote every time there's an election, whether that's within your school, in your district that you're living in, wherever you're going to college, look at the things that are around you that is affecting the community that you're in. Those things are going to directly affect you. If you can vote on these officials and these local officials, you can definitely hold them accountable as well. But if you're changing the dynamic of that, ultimately you should see that you have the power to change the dynamic on a presidential level and on a judicial legislative level.
Absolutely. That was, I was going to have Mr. Leo Smith earlier, and he and I had a conversation earlier today about how the political sphere actually works from the bottom up and not the top down. So us addressing those local issues, the local positions and all of that kind of thing, then affects the statewide, and then the statewide affects the national. And it's just like that's how that process really works, right? So with young people operating, and I try to stay away from that message of that national spotlight, and get them to understand more of the local piece. Our local officials, in DeKalb County, we have a CEO, or, of course, we have a sheriff's race coming up in DeKalb County on the 24th as well as the primary election. And then there'll be a sheriff's race in Fulton County in May. So, those races, our state legislature, are very important. So I'm sure that you're telling your constituency all about that. So, yeah, absolutely. One more question. Well, not actually one more. I have two more. But this one I wanted to say, I got the flyer for the watch party, and I actually wanted to drop in, but I couldn't go. But and I saw some of the photos from the event. And I saw one really nice picture that had 13 beautiful, lovely young ladies in it, and no guys. And I'm like, where are the brothers here? Where are they? Were they there? I mean,
they were there. I call it the power of the sister vote. No matter what, sisters will show up and show out. But the encouraging thing, there were males and there were young adult men that were there. We had a couple of members of the NAACP from Clark, Atlanta, to come out. We had even individuals, and not just men either, but individuals that were there at the location that we had it. We ironically had it at the 10, which is located right across from the Dome. People that did not necessarily come for our debate watch party, but got engaged during the moment of seeing what was going on. So that was very interesting as well. So to answer your question, there were men there. I just think ironically that photo was just taken, and we didn't get to capture that the male
the male component. Yeah, my question said, did the guys leave before the pictures? That's what I was.
I think they were kind of hanging out in the spot. How kind of guys do when they see the women doing that.
Oh, okay, all right. I'm just checking. I want to make sure the brothers represent. You know what I mean?
They represent, yeah.
Okay. Now, one more question though. Really, now I am the least millennial basher. I am not that dude. I stand up for my young folks, but what can those of us who want to see more young people, especially young black people, involved and engaged in the political process be doing to make that happen? What do you think?
Very simple. I think it's more of understand the millennial, understand our young adults, understand them and respect them as civically engaged individuals as well. We make up a large amount of the population, which is now increasing. Especially when you're looking at cities like Atlanta, in Georgia. So understanding, respecting them for their vote, also encouraging them to have that voter turnout, encouraging them on their power, and also educating them exactly in not only issues, but also how it works to vote. We know in Atlanta there's a heavy population of schools. We have a lot of schools in the AUC area. But if you educate these students on, the times when they should register to vote, deadlines on registering to vote, early voting, what they need to vote, especially if they're out of state students, or millennials living here that may have moved from somewhere else and don't necessarily have a Georgia ID. How would they go about filling an absentee ballot? But even if they're not voting right here for the Georgia elections or Atlanta elections, how can they continue to be engaged in their hometown, in their home cities? So encouraging them on that as well, letting them know, which I think is just absurd in the state of Georgia, how there is no way for you to register to vote or same day registration to vote, and be able to register to vote and walk right into the polls. That's a whole nother conversation about voter disenfranchisement.
Right.
But just educating them on what it actually takes to being a civically engaged voter, and for those who are or who want to be, respecting them and understanding them for that civically engaged person that they are.
Ariel Singleton, you are awesome. Thank you so very much. I have to ask you the same question I asked Latasha. So when are you running for office, young lady?
There is years ahead of me. I'm just getting into getting my feet wet as far as still navigating this thing called life.
Okay.
So wherever God leads me, that's where I go. But I will always, no matter how old I get, I would like to always educate and promote the millennial vote. I believe that each generation is the future for the next generations, and if we don't vote for what's going on now, then our children and people 20 years from now are going to be in kind of a frenzy. So.
Well, thank you so very much. I got to tell you, I'm 58, and I am, like my mom says, I have far more days behind me than I do in front of me. And so to look at you and hear you and understand where you are on this thing called life, the future is in good hands.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so very much, Ariel. Ariel Singleton, everybody.
Thank you for this opportunity.
No, thank you. All right, folks, we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back. You're watching Know Better with Kipper Jones. Welcome back, everybody. This is Know Better with Kipper Jones, and Shannon Clausen. Shannon Clausen is the statewide outreach director for Georgia Equality. She earned her Master of Public Health degree from Emory University, where she also founded the Emory LGBT Graduate Coalition. Prior to that, she lived in Cameroon, where she worked as an adolescent health program manager. She has a long history of volunteering as a citizen lobbyist, student activist, and political nerd. Is that what we're going to say? We're going to say that? Okay. She's passionate about civic engagement and truly believes that government can and should make people's lives better. Ladies and gentlemen, my friend, Shannon Clausen.
Good to be here.
Oh, I'm so excited to have you here. Yeah, that's awesome. I had a bunch of stuff I was going to ask you, but I'm just going to go here. So in the time we have left, share with our audience what you think a regular citizen can do to get involved and affect change.
What can't they do, right? I mean, I think we have created this narrative in this country of government is bad and it's all in the powerful, rich elite's hands. And there might be truth to that, right? Like Latasha did a great summary of these very powerful forces that are creating the America that we live in right now. But at the end of the day, it is a democracy, and we still have the right to vote, or at least a lot of us do. And the more that we exercise that right, the more that we are civically engaged, the more that we pay attention, we've seen a real erosion of our civic rights, right? We've seen the voting rights law, being gutted across the country. And I think that was happening because we weren't being fully engaged. And so the people that do have the privilege to be engaged right now, the people that still have the right to vote, it's all up to us. And I think that however you can engage is the way you should, right? And so if all you can do is make sure that you are registered and you get to the polls and you vote, and that is you giving 110%, that's what you should do. If you giving 110% is, coming down to the Capitol to a lobby day, or maybe even just calling your representative on an issue that you care about, that's what you can do. If giving 110% is running for school board or, state legislature, we have somebody like Park Cannon who was, one of the youngest people ever elected to a state house, right? That was her 110%. Mm-hmm. So when you talk about like, what can we do to make a difference in our lives, our communities, our government, the possibilities are limitless and the options are infinite, and we just need to go out there and grab them, because if we don't, we're going to lose them. Those opportunities, the more we ignore them, the less those rights and opportunities are exercised, the faster we lose them.
The less that they're available.
Exactly.
I get it. I know because we do some work together.
Yes.
But we're just working on a campaign regarding the lack of Medicaid expansion. Mm-hmm. Georgia is one of, I don't know whether maybe 18 states or so that has not done Medicaid expansion. And so the people who can afford to have health insurance under the Affordable Care Act, they're fine, but there are people who make enough money, but they can't afford the premiums, but they make too much money to qualify for Medicaid. They fall into the gap. Mm-hmm. And then the Medicaid expansion would cover that gap, but the state is not doing that. There is a waiver program that they're trying to introduce, correct?
Yeah, and so they introduced this waiver under the Patients First Act last year, and at the end of the day, the issue is it's not good enough. For the same price tag, we're insuring at best case scenario, over 5 years, we are insuring 80,000 Georgians that currently don't have health care. Whereas if we just did a traditional Medicaid expansion, we could, for the same price, expand healthcare access to 470,000 Georgians. So it's just not good enough, and it leaves behind caretakers, and it, takes away, doesn't give access to important benefits like transportation. What good is health insurance if you can't get to the doctor? And so at the end of the day, it's expensive when we're in the middle of, a really important budget year, and there is a better way. And that's the way that many other states have done, and they're fine. Things are going okay. We can do it here too, right? Yeah. And the issue is when we're talking about healthcare expansion, like if people in your community and in your state and cities don't have access to good health care, they are not able to fully contribute to society, right? It's not just that parent that doesn't have health care. And it's not just those wage hours lost. A lot of times we like to talk about like the economic cost of no health care, right? And yeah, that's a really great argument when you're talking to a fiscal conservative. But like, people are more than the money they earn, and people are more than their contribution to the economy, right? And so when you have a sick parent, it's that kid is also sick, right? And that kid isn't going to school and isn't getting the support and necessary resources that they need, right? And so if somebody's constantly sick, they can't volunteer, they can't engage in their community, they can't be there as a social safety net for their friends and family, right? So there's a there's a trickle down effect in a different way. And so when we talk about healthcare, Georgia right now is having a really hard time retaining and recruiting qualified health professionals, and expanding Medicaid would really go a long way in doing that.
I mean, it's like, what do you say, right?
Yeah.
But, I mean, that's one reason. It's just another reason why we're having this forum and expressing the necessity for everyone to participate when it comes to voting. And you're voting for people who have this information, who are armed with this information, to then go into the state legislature, into the federal government, and be able to get and affect change in regards to issues like this. When we're talking about criminal justice with Latasha, and we're talking about Medicaid here, that's the way that you get things to change, is you have to engage in the process that changes it. So we've got to understand that, it's our vote that is ultimately your voice. And that's what makes things move.
And I will say that y'all don't have to do this alone. There are a lot of issues out there. There are a lot of candidates out there, but there are equally a lot of organizations out there that our whole mission is to make it accessible and easy to understand for you. So for example, if you care about Medicaid expansion and healthcare in our state, go to covergeorgia.org. We have a whole coalition of organizations that we spend our staff hours sifting through these proposals, figuring out what they mean, crunching the numbers, and helping you engage on it, right? Because it's not just voting. As important as voting is, there's public comment periods where what we say about these waivers actually changes the outcomes of the waivers. We've already delayed one waiver. We can change. We've already had small changes to another. We have another public comment period coming up this summer. And if you want to be engaged on any given issue, find the people that care about that issue. If you care about voter registration, go to georgiaequality.org and we will help you register people to vote. We will get you registered and then work with you to register your friends and family. Same with Georgia Stand Up. Ariel was working with them, right? Mm-hmm. There's plenty of organizations that are working on minimum wage, criminal justice, reproductive health care. All of these organizations have dedicated staff time to sifting through the muck. So go find the orgs that are working here in Georgia on the ground, not these big national orgs, although they're doing good work. Find the people in your city, in Atlanta. Find your local Black Voter Matters chapter and get engaged with them, because then they will tell you where to go, when to raise your voice, what you should say, and what the impact is for you. You don't have to do all this research on your own. We're here to help.
You'll see all of that information too on the lower third. We've got the Georgia Equality, Black Voters Matter, and all that information. So please take advantage of it while it's there. And also, I will say this too. There's an African proverb that says to pray with your feet. So, I guess there's another way to say that, like, faith without works is dead. But there is a lobby day coming up at the state capitol. Is it the 9th?
The 9th,
So
this
that's
Monday.
This coming Monday. And for me, I've as a musician and as part of the LGBTQ community, I've worked with Georgia Equality and done Lobby Day there. I've gone with the music community and we've done Music Day there, and it's just amazing to go into the state capitol and pull your legislators out of session, and they'll come and speak to you, and you can tell them what your cause is, what your reason is for being there, and when they can put a face with the message, it somehow makes a difference. I mean, really does. And you can be a part of, you can always be a part of that. I tell people all the time that state capitol is where the legislators work, but that's your house. And you have every right to be there and every right for your voice to be heard. So you can also go to Georgia Equality, and if you'd like to do the lobby day on Monday,
Please do. We have lots of work for you, and we will walk you through it. You can walk in there knowing nothing, and we will tell you where to go and what the issues are. There's a lot of really, really important bills that we are fighting for and fighting against. March 12th is kind of a showdown day, and so it's called Crossover Day, and so we are trying to get everybody out there and get our issues heard on March 9th. You can go to georgiaequality.org, and there's a little volunteer link, and it's so much fun, and the legislators absolutely love it. They get so excited, even if they 100% do not agree on your issue, they're just excited to have somebody come down and talk to them, especially if they don't live in Atlanta. If they're not in an Atlanta district, I had a guy once that, like, I sent somebody that wasn't even his constituents, but he was like way out in Dalton or something. It wasn't even his constituent, and he was just so excited that somebody came. He's like, you came down and visited me? So they do love it. It's a really great experience. It definitely makes you feel, a part of your own government, which we all should, because it's ours. It's our government.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember the first time I did it. And you're right. To your point, I had no idea what I was doing, but you get in it and you learn. There's a session where they teach you what to do and how to give the note to the page, and he goes and gets the legislator, and they come back out. And once you do it, I mean, you really feel like you're a part of this organism called government, and it's an awesome thing. Shannon, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much
Always
for
a pleasure.
coming and hanging out with me. And you got your No
I'm
Better.
so excited about this mug.
She got a No Better mug.
It's what you get when you come down to the studio.
And if you want your own No Better mug, you can get it. You just got to go to kipperjones.com and go to the No Better Show page and get your own No Better mug. Listen, thank you guys for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Once again, thank you to Status Network for allowing me this platform. Thank you to my manager, Johnny Cornegay, in your absence. Thank you so much. David, thank you for sharing me with the world. I got to give a shout out to my assistant who didn't come with me this week, Kimante. He had a little accident this week, but he's on the mend and he's going to be all right. Listen, let me just say that this is an awesome opportunity that I've been afforded, and it would do my heart a ton of good to know that somebody was informed or educated or just blessed by whatever we were able to bring for you and bring to you tonight. Thank you so very much. This show, this episode will be archived at YouTube. You can also go to either my Facebook page or the Status Network Facebook or Manifest TV, and you can see it anytime. And know that we'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode of No Better with Kipper Jones. Thank you so very much. God bless you. God keep you is my prayer.
The views and opinions expressed on No Better are those of its host and guest and do not reflect those of the Status Network or any of its affiliates.